All right, so it's 1 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started with the afternoon session when our next panel. So we're really looking forward to the next panel on a discussion about lithium. So I know it was a great lunch. Yeah, but we got to get started. So come on in and get ready to focus up here. We've got an amazing panel. So for those of you who don't know, I'd be surprised if there's anyone in this room who doesn't know, lithium is a critical mineral, critical material. It's very, very important for energy. And we've got a panel of experts here. Nora Ankrum is going to moderate and introduce the panelists. But we were thinking about having a panel on critical minerals at large, but we've got, like, lithium itself is so important, and we've got some folks who are focusing on that. So this is a panel about that. So I'll turn it over to you, Nora. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? No, I hear it. So yeah, we're here to talk about lithium. And I think most of us have heard of lithium-ion batteries. We might know that they are in electric vehicles and have some capacity to help us with grid storage. But we're going to delve into this with our three panelists. So I'm really excited to introduce these guys. We've got Teague Egan from EnergyX.
Hi, guys.
We've got Rémi from ExxonMobil. Rémi doesn't have
Good
a last
afternoon.
name. You're just a one name Rémi.
Just one name. Loiseau.
Thank you. And we've got Marc Cutler from Geolith.
Hi, everyone.
So I thought we'd start just a little bit with each of them sharing a bit about their career and their companies and what they do within the lithium landscape. And then we'll back out a little bit and give a little basics if we need to, and then jump into really what we're talking about, which is how do we enable lithium in the U.S. market. So do you want to start, Teague?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm Teague Egan. I'm the founder and CEO of EnergyX. And I started EnergyX in 2018. Prior to that, I was not in any sort of related energy industry. So Nora said, there might be some students here that are thinking about energy but not yet in it. I had no prior experience in anything even closely related to engineering or energy or science and chemistry. I got an A in my 11th grade chemistry class. That was about the extent of my knowledge. I was in the entertainment industry, and I studied business at USC with a focus of entrepreneurship. But I started EnergyX in 2018, and I saw the huge supply-demand gap of lithium. I bought Tesla stock in 2013. That was a lucky move, and then started driving a Tesla from some of the profits of my stock. So I became a believer in the electric vehicle transition, and that's ultimately what piqued my interest. I became a believer in not only the electric vehicle revolution, but also the energy transition. That's what piqued my interest in the sector, and then I found myself in Bolivia in 2018, standing on the world's largest lithium reserve that was completely undeveloped by the country of Bolivia. And I said, we're going to need a lot of lithium moving forward because I believe that electric vehicles are the future, and I'm going to figure out how to get it in a more sustainable, efficient, and cost-effective way. So that's why I started EnergyX.
Thanks. Shall I go to you, Rémi?
Sure. So, as Nora said, Rémi Loiseau. I'm the U.S. lithium manager for ExxonMobil. 18 years there, which we were actually joking, a lifer from university straight into there. But if there are a couple words that sum up that career, it's been diverse and exciting. I've been all over the world from our upstream business side and energy and oil and gas development in West Africa, South America, Europe, Asia, Newfoundland, Canada, off the east coast of Canada as well. And so half of my career has been kind of major capital project management and execution, building the very complicated things that we do to take on kind of the challenges of the world and applying technology. And the other half has been in more corporate strategy, portfolio management, opportunity identification. And it's kind of the melding of those that comes together as ExxonMobil is building its lithium business opportunities and evaluating that says, okay, what does the opportunity landscape look like? Just as Teague was talking about, we see large growth potential and demand growth opportunities in the lithium space. And what is it actually going to take to make it happen? And that's something we'll talk about a little bit more about, how did Exxon actually get into this? But it's been, I've been in this role for just under 3 years now, and it's been pretty exciting to venture into a new space, and that's that diversity that this career has kind of offered up.
And so before we go to Marc, who is a geologist by training, what was did I miss it? What is your
mechanical engineer from North Carolina State University.
Okay, so we've got a mechanical engineer, a geologist, and our tried and true entrepreneur. Did you study business? You may have said, and I missed it.
Yeah, business.
Yeah. Okay. So Marc, let's hear your story.
Thanks, Nora. I graduated as a geologist from Memorial University of Newfoundland. Ended up working in northern Canada for 3 years looking for nickel in hard rock. Eventually found my way into Halliburton. I was there for about 20 years drilling oil wells all over the world, West Africa, Middle East, South America, Falkland Islands. Eventually left Halliburton and went to a Canadian fracking company. That was sold. We sold it to a local company in Houston. And then I entered the startup world. So I found some colleagues who had, entryways into private equity markets, and we were buying and selling 3 service companies, of which one we still own and are looking to sell it. And somehow I stumbled on to the lithium technology world in lithium extraction, and I thought it was really interesting. It was explained to me in a very simple way, and I'm able to explain it in a very simple way, and it works. So this company is a French company, and they manufacture and invent technology around extracting lithium out of brine water. It's really amazing technology, and we'll talk about that as the panel goes on.
I love that. So your company was founded in 2016. It's a French company, but now you're head of the U.S. arm.
Correct.
And you were founded in 2018. And so these 2 companies are some of the earliest in this space. Is that correct? That's what we were talking about back there. And you said something about there were maybe 30 of these types of companies just a little bit ago, and now we're up to, what was that, maybe 18?
80, maybe 80 out there, Teague? I don't know.
80 out there today.
It's a diverse technology landscape for sure.
Yeah. Over the course of like 18 months, we've seen that expansion from 30
For
to
sure.
80. So briefly, we kind of talked about the scale a little bit. Brian has told us it's an important thing. So I don't know if we need to establish that a bit, but I do want to know, how do we get lithium, and where, before we talk about the US, do we find it? Where are the most important places to find it in the world? And I don't know which one of you wants to cover this one, but I don't like.
Yeah, I'll start. Well, lithium is obviously an element on the periodic table, and it's a white silvery metal, but it also comes in the form of a salt, pretty much. So there's 2 main resource types. One is hard rock, which is typically found in the spodumene ore. The largest deposits of this are in Australia. They're digging out huge amounts of earth and processing it like that. And then the other main resource type that's commercialized today is brine. So basically really salty water. You can think about the Great Salt Lake up in Utah. The biggest place in the world for these brines is in South America, in the Andean mountain range. This place that I went in Bolivia called Salar de Uyuni is the largest salt flat in the world, about 4,000 square miles. And that's the other main resource type. There is one in the middle, sedimentary clays, that a few companies are trying to develop that are not yet commercialized. But those are typically the places that you find lithium.
Thank you. And so your company owns some assets in both in the U.S. and outside the U.S., right?
So EnergyX started as what's now called DLE, direct lithium extraction. And I don't think it was called that back in 2018 or 2016. But that's the acronym now. We looked at this and said, like I said in my first kind of spiel, we're going to need a lot more lithium in the future than is currently produced today. The advent of electric vehicles, basically an easy kind of synergy or analogy is it takes 10,000 iPhone batteries to make one electric vehicle battery. So if you want to build just 1 million electric vehicles, that's the equivalent of 10 billion iPhones. So I think that's more than smartphones that's ever been sold. So this was the first major application of this battery material. It basically has just caused batteries, the demand for batteries to explode. So we said, we looked at the existing way that lithium was produced from brine in these big evaporation ponds, these big salt ponds that harvest the other salts, sodium, potassium, magnesium, that have their purposes. But we looked at that and said that that was extremely inefficient to produce lithium. So, we're in 21st century here. Like, we shouldn't be using salt, evaporation ponds to produce this critical material. And that's why we started looking at ways to more efficiently and cost effectively produce it in much larger volumes.
I gotcha. And then, so that's what you guys are doing. You guys are also doing DLE. That's not what you would think of with ExxonMobil, so.
Yeah, I often get that question of, how did Exxon get into lithium? Where does that connection come from? And I think it's as you start to understand, where the resource types are, and for ourselves, really a focus on the brine type resources, and where those present themselves. So whether it's in shallower salt flats, like Teague mentioned, in maybe Salt Lake or South America, but it also presents itself in deep brines, often called oil-filled brines or geothermal brines or conventional brines. They're kind of different nuances, a variety of those, but those that are underground and very similar to the kind of hydrocarbon nature of history of exploration and identification that a company like Exxon might have. So when we started our low carbon solutions business and then eventually the lithium venture that was developed under that, some of the core principles are really about looking at one, where there's market growth and potential and scale. And Teague just did a great job explaining the potential forecasts that are out there from a demand growth profile in this critical mineral sector that creates those types of markets and opportunities. But the second is really a tie to our kind of skills and capabilities. A company that's been around for over 120 years and has built up an extreme amount of kind of skills and capabilities, not just in its kind of technologies and other fronts, but even every day it's lived in the people that are working for it, which is, I think just about everybody likes to say our people are some of our greatest assets, and it's those that know how to go and apply that history and continue to evolve it and progress it. So in looking at these kind of deep brines and that potential and where technology started to come into play, such as DLE, we really saw a connection all the way through that whole value chain to our capabilities, from resource identification to drilling and operations to extraction type technologies, which are very similar to many that we have in our chemical plants and refineries and other areas, to customer development and market development side. We have kind of co-offerings and other things in a large aspect with the same types of customers from other parts of our businesses. And now we're able to bring together kind of an integrated offering to that same customer side. So it's that total story of how it kind of ties into all those skills and capabilities and that vertical integration across the value chain and the market potential that makes it a natural fit and a pretty exciting fit that I've enjoyed. And In the U.S. today, it does less than 1% of kind of lithium production for the global supply, but it's got unique deposits and capabilities and potential. And so that ability to look at U.S. deposits and into some of those deeper brines and others where there's a lot of potential is really something that's unlocked by technologies like direct lithium extraction and other areas where that resource, one, would have never had the opportunity to produce, or certainly not commercially produce. But two, to be able to do it on an even more environmentally sustainable, low carbon intensity type methodology, very different from the intensity of, hard rock mining. DLE is estimated to be about 2/3 less intense from a carbon intensity. So just in the process, let alone the end use of where you're trying to apply this in the energy transition side, but also looking at more sustainable ways of actually even production and processing.
And then for Marc, are you guys all in on DLE too?
We are. That's our business. We don't do anything else. The company was founded from an engineer who was working on the geothermal wells in France and Germany, large volumes of water containing low volumes of lithium. And he started thinking, if I could get that lithium out of there, there's a place in the market for this. So he raised some money and hired a couple of PhDs out of the universities in Alsace and France. And they invented a filter, an ion sieve, that it's patented. And when you flow the brine through it, the lithium sticks to the material, the polymer material that's inside it. The brine can flush out back down hole. And then we rinse the filter with an acid, hydrochloric acid, and you end up with lithium chloride. And what that did with that enabled our technology to work in very low-grade brines. So this past week, we just installed our first permanent plant in California in a place called Searles Valley in the desert there. Their brine stream is 32 ppm. That's pretty low. Right, so we're able to do that economically. They've been solution mining boron and some other salts and chemicals out of that for about 150 years, 151 years, I think, this year. They tried to extract the lithium in the 90s and couldn't do it. And so we've been working with them for the last year or so and at various scales and have proven it out that it works. So it's exciting that we're able to take this technology, apply it to a waste stream of water, and make something economical out of it without adding anything else harmful to the environment.
And did you say you guys started operating today, your California plant?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, every day. So let's talk a little bit about then the U.S. and where we're looking in the U.S. where we think that lithium has opportunities. You're all in on the smackover.
Yeah, as is Exxon. No, but so I was telling the story of the beginning of EnergyX. We initially developed the DLE technology, but then, and our original goal was to license that technology to large existing lithium producers, basically saying, your ponds are inefficient, use this technology instead. We really ran into a lot of headwinds with that because we didn't take into account that they'd already spent billions of dollars on their existing infrastructure. And we were trying to sell them a plant that would cost a few $100 million or maybe up to $1 billion. And that's a big investment decision for any company. So those are long sales cycles. And ultimately, we decided that in order to control our own destiny, we needed to vertically integrate. And so in 2023, we acquired our first lithium asset, which was in Chile. We acquired 100,000 acres in Chile, which is where a large amount of the global lithium production comes from today. And then in 2024, we acquired our second asset. We wanted a US-based asset. And after kind of years of looking at the different resource owners that we were originally trying to license to in the US, we ultimately chose the Smackover as what we believe to be the best lithium resource in the US.
And does everyone know where the Smackover is? I learned this in the It's,
Yeah, it's
large.
Well, the geologist might.
yeah, it wants to cover the smackover.
It starts in northern Florida and stretches all the way into Texas, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a geological formation that's about 8,000 to 10,000 feet below. And the reason this was actually kind of discovered was because some of the largest, what's the chemical that?
Bromine.
What? Bromine, yeah. Bromine producers are in Arkansas, Albemarle and Lanxess, and people were looking at the feed of the the bromine plants, and it had decent grades of lithium concentration, and that's kind of what tipped people off that this could be a good lithium resource.
So everybody's headed to the smackover. And then we didn't mention, so like there's the, at the global scale, there's the lithium triangle, so it's called. So a lot of lithium comes from what? Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. And so here, I guess we don't know our lithium triangle in the US yet, but maybe it's the smackover.
Maybe.
I think you'll end up, there's a lot from a geologic perspective and potential. Lithium's actually in just about everything. It's in ocean waters and it's in other areas. And the key is really finding commercially viable quantities, scale, and resource. So the Smackover is well known. Salton Sea as an example in California. There's other formations around the U.S. The Smackover has kind of garnered a lot of attention and certainly an interesting area for us as we're considering some of our first projects across those states and bands. Because of it's got some history of industry there, but it also has, we think about key enablers. So you need the resource, you need scale potential, you need cost competitiveness. So that resource quality is certainly a first step to that, and we'll talk about all the other things that it actually takes to get cost competitive into this front. But you also need established regulations and areas. So areas like Arkansas had a long history of actually regulating and managing the brine industry in addition to the oil and gas side. Louisiana has rapidly caught up to that in the past future. Texas has been implementing its fronts, and it's got a couple more that are rapidly moving as well. So that regulatory foundational side is, at least within the broader U.S. front, is also an attractive thought, because we really do see regulators and others stepping up to put those foundations in place that are needed in order to really make investment and project type considerations in those resources.
So I kind of want to lean into that a little more, but you had an interesting story about the origins of your company and what it meant to be a French company and some of the enabling features there. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, sure. So the French governments, the local and national, were very helpful in funding the company and making sure the company had access to capital to start when they started up, and then when they expanded to North America and then later to South America, the different businesses associated with the French consulates would help us. Would make the connections with the right law firms, the right people in legislation, even the something as simple as the accountants lining up the tax structure of the company in order to be successful. So it was a plug and play network that I didn't have to start from nothing. I had a support network as the first employee over here.
What are some of the sort of other key enabling things that we need here in the U.S. or that we have that you think are going to help with the lithium market expanding?
I think that Rémi brought up a really good point in terms of regulation and permitting. I think that the Biden administration did an incredible job of passing the IRA and literally kind of pumping a lot of money into the energy transition and incentivizing companies to invest into the energy transition, plus granting money to startups. And Exxon doesn't need grants, but it certainly was, I think, an interesting idea for Exxon to get into the business, because all the big automotive companies were looking to electrify, right? So the Biden administration did a great job of that. Where they lacked was permits and regulation. And it doesn't matter how much money you put into it if it takes 10 years to permit a project. So where I think the Trump administration is actually succeeding is kind of deregulation and expediting big projects and investment, actually putting that money to work. That's critical. You can't build a project unless you have A, the money, and B, the permits. I think the other area, and that goes all the way down the supply chain, right? What's semi-alarming to me is, so I think that there's a whole host of big battery plants coming online in the next few years, like 20 or 25 massive battery plants. But battery plants are making the cells, and there's still intermediary processing steps between the raw materials like lithium. You have to turn that lithium into cathodes, and then formulate the cathodes into electrodes. And the U.S. is really lacking, I think, in that. So that's a potential area of challenge where we obviously don't want to be shipping this lithium over to China to process it into cathodes. So figuring out that problem is, I think, something that's on the horizon.
There's some more challenges we might talk about that you guys foresee just in the market.
The part of my answer to that question typically is the biggest challenge is the fact that it almost takes a bit of everything. So I talked all the way back to, if you think about going all the way to resource identification, to production, to extraction using DLE technologies and other areas, to actually converting it to specialty chemical products of high impurity grade management, like lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide, which ultimately go into the cathodes and other areas, and everything that goes in between that. Even DLE is a key enabling technology, that which lets deep brine aquifers or resources like we're talking about in the U.S. Enables them, because evaporation ponds don't work maybe somewhere where it rains more than in the high Andes, as an example. But there are hundreds of process technologies and others, even just in that integrated process, to kind of go from wellhead to say lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide. And so that ability to integrate all of that consistently from a vertical integration standpoint, to have it all continuously operational, to deliver, when you speak with customers, what are they interested in? They're interested in security of supply, and kind of they're interested in quality and consistency of that. Battery chemistry is very, very important, and so it's looking for very high spec product, and they're looking for cost effectiveness, as any supply chain would. We have MOUs, speaking to the cathode world that's developing that. We have MOUs with SK On and with LG for plants here in the U.S. That they're looking to develop for some of our potential first project products and other areas. So you're seeing that growth in the value chain on that front, but really tackling that number of today less than 1% of the actual lithium production and carbonate and hydroxide chemical supply is even coming from the U.S. It's needing to be able to get all the way through that entire value chain that I think is actually probably the biggest challenge. It takes it all.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about the value chain, like how companies like yours fit into that?
Sure. So we're a little different in that we don't own the lithium assets, right? We're the technology on surface that enables the lithium to be extracted. Excuse me. And the piece that we play is, making that lithium carbonate, making that lithium chloride, and then what? So this year, this past year, KBR approached us to partner with us to be able to do the flow sheets, to be able to provide all the post-DLE process, and to do the process guarantees and warranties to the asset owners to make the lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide, which is, it's really good. If you think about a company our size, we're a relatively small cap company compared to an Exxon or any of the other lithium producers out there. And so they would be taking a gamble working with a company like us that didn't have the backing of a bigger company like KBR to do that. So that piece helps us be successful in the market.
So I'm curious, if you guys were students right now, undergrad or graduate, and you were looking out into the landscape, what do you think, what would you wish like, I wish I had jumped in and done this, or what juicy problem would you have wanted to solve? What sort of advice or stories might you have in mind? Anyone?
You guys can go first.
I'll start. Actually, I had the opportunity. I was having lunch with a few professors today, and we were talking just about that. That was their question. that was their question as well. Well, I mean, one, it's just put yourself out there. Go, try, identify, experiment. Learn, educate yourself, be inquisitive, because building up that kind of base knowledge of what's going on or what might be interesting is, and having that kind of inquisitive mindset and skills and capability to be investigative is really important. The other side, I'm an engineering background as well, but everything that we just talked about has a large aspect of business and markets and commercial to it, because at the end of the day, ultimately project developments and other aspects, they have to make sense. That's one of the fundamentals that ExxonMobil is focused on is, we're focused on the business fundamentals of this business in order to work at it. We think we've got all the skills and capabilities and stuff that I mentioned to be very successful and really uniquely positioned to deliver upon that. So expanding yourself to really think about understanding whether it's the value of information. We've heard great talks about AI and other areas, but how do you translate data into value? How do you translate other things to value? How do, in a technology basis, does it ultimately translate into the business case to deliver something that's more competitive or more efficient or more cost effective or uniquely suited to do something and enable a resource that wasn't capable of being able to afford? Being able to translate not just from the kind of that pure technical engineering other aspects and that business judgment, that business intellect, that value of information type mindset, and combining those two together, I think is an incredibly valuable kind of tool as you bring yourself out into market, into jobs, into opportunities, and then think about how to be creative and really contribute from there.
And I mean, I'm curious for you. I mean, you have a business degree, and like it's this, energy field is. I mean, anyone can get obsessed with energy. Of course, I feel a personal bias, but like if you're someone who cares about energy from a different perspective, but you're like intimidated by the technology of it, I don't know that you ever were. But do you have any advice for someone in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm only 36. I'm almost basically a student still, but. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, so I've always been curious, I think is a good way to put it, interested. My first successful business, I had many unsuccessful businesses. My first successful business was in entertainment, which is absolutely nothing related to this, and that didn't like really capture me. I didn't feel like that had potential to have a big impact on the world. Some people may argue otherwise. But I'll go back to a story that I think was extremely motivating for me and hopefully would be for students in this room. In 2017, my entertainment business was kind of slowing down a bit. And my father came to me and he said, Teague, you should go write down your 5 passions and why you're passionate about them, and then the 5 industries that you think are going to be the biggest industries in the next 20 to 40 years and why. And, no student wants to listen to their dad, so it took me like a month or 2 to do this. But I ended up doing it, and the 5 industries of the future that I really believed in were space technology and space travel, energy transition, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology like personalized medicine, and blockchain or digitalized currency. And then my 5 passions were sports. I love sports. Design, I love like drawing and painting and architecture. Physical fitness and health, like I go to the gym almost every day. I think I'm going to live to be probably around 150 years old. You can read that in the Wall Street Journal. Space technology and energy transition, because owned a Tesla and really looked up to Elon. That's questionable today, but so the two that overlapped were space technology and energy transition. And then, by a stroke of luck, a few months after I did that exercise, I was traveling through Bolivia and really came across this lithium opportunity. And that's what I've focused the past 6 years on. Today, I think that artificial intelligence, I still think that those 5 industries, I was pretty spot on, I think. But I think artificial intelligence has really accelerated past the others in a great way over the past 3 or 4 years. I also think that I'm starting a new company because I believe that all pathways of the future lead through nuclear energy. I think that within the next 20 years, the majority of the world's power will be from nuclear, starting with fission, and then assuming that we crack the code for fusion, it will all be fusion. The cost per kilowatt hour of fusion to generate power is just minuscule compared to any other competitor. So if I were a student today, and I consider myself a lifelong student, I would really focus on nuclear energy.
I have a lot of follow-up questions for you, but I feel like I want to make Brian come kiki or booba everybody from here. But we've got about 10 minutes, and I bet we have a lot of folks in the room who may even be from the late John Goodenough's lab and may have some really great lithium questions. So I want to make sure you guys get the chance to ask some questions of our lithium experts up here.
Questions? Yeah.
JT Mayo here. Thank you once again for everything. These are 3 really incredible companies, and I really like seeing what y'all are doing. My question has to do with where you see the uncertainty sort of in the lithium supply versus the uncertainty in the lithium demand, given sort of the nature of geopolitics right now. I'm just trying to get an idea of if you think we'll have the supply that we need, or is there going to be a big issue with permitting, timing, access, all this kind of things?
We talk demand side and that growth potential come there, and that's the exact opposite part of that equation. So as you look at some of the build out that's starting to happen in the U.S. down the value chain, in other words, having that opportunity space to bring on, non-existent really U.S. critical mineral supply is going to be imperative and a big opportunity space. In the global side, it will always be a mix. I mean, we're a business that does this globally in a variety of different value chains, and I think part of what you'll see from an Exxon view is it goes back to the business fundamentals have to make sense. So we're constantly looking from both a value perspective, a risk profile perspective, management, and how we build portfolios of opportunity, and that's what we're doing. We're constantly evaluating opportunities, just like we would an oil and gas exploration business, and bringing those together. There's an existing domination of the supply chain that exists that we talked about today in Western Australia and South America and China. I think the further that diversifies with places like North America being able to enter into that really helps, but I think it will continue to be a challenge, and that is why you're starting to see North American supply begin to compete. I mean, some of the best lithium resources in the world, no question doubt, are in South America from those that have been identified in structures. But there are all kinds of other things that it takes to actually bring something on supply, to cost competitively bring something on supply. And that's why, from the ExxonMobil side, we're expanding that purview to really look at what it takes to deliver to market and the total ecosphere that kind of balances that value risk profile. And pretty excited about the opportunities that we see, potentially starting in North America, but we also have global opportunities that we're looking at too.
Hi all, thanks for the panel here, very nice. I have a crystal ball question. Where do you all think that the US will be from a global market share production perspective from the current 1% in an outlook of 10 years from now, as you are deploying capital and resources in this marketplace? I'll be curious about that.
I wish I had a crystal ball. I can tell you that we aspire to be a strong part of that from wherever it's. I think the opportunity is there. We talked about resources that exist. It will take all of those enablers, and it will take significant amounts of capital. It will take significant amount of technology expertise and creativity, of business entrepreneurship. I think we see a lot of folks doing that. I think there will be success stories. I think there will be failures like any business as it comes together. And so you will see a growth perspective where it ends up. I think we're interested in being a strong part of that, but as an actual forecast, who knows?
Marc, a quick question. You mentioned you have installed the first plant in California for low ppm brine. That's very exciting. Produced water, and generally speaking, has low ppm, among other challenges. So is there a CapEx item that we should be looking at as part of the DLE conventional plant where we handle 150 to 100 ppm level?
Is there a what?
A CapEx item that we need to consider in addition to the existing
Sorry,
ones?
I can't. No. Oh, a capital expenditure. So the CapEx, I mean, that's really almost an operator, an asset owner question rather than a technology provider question. It will vary based on the concentration of the lithium and the flow rates of the lithium, and if any treatments need to be done pre-DLE.
I can answer that too. You know, obviously, all of us are in the business to be profitable, and the lithium price has been quite volatile over the past handful of years. I think it's at hopefully a low right now. Hopefully, it goes back up a little bit. 2 years ago, and today it's at around $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 a ton, or $10, $11, $12 a kilo. 2 years ago, it spiked up to $80,000 a kilo. So if the price is that high, it's actually detrimental to the industry because that price gets passed through all the way to the end consumer of electric vehicles. And if electric vehicles are more expensive, then more people are not going to buy them. So the whole goal of this is to create more robust supply chains that ultimately lower the cost of electric vehicles and make them competitive with regular ICE cars. I think that we want the long-term projections of price. You know, if the price is at $80,000 a ton, it doesn't matter how much your CapEx, OpEx is. Lithium producers would be making money. The long-term price projections are somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 per ton, maybe a little bit higher. And then, so you obviously want to be profitable, and you need to look at, okay, what's my CapEx amortized over how long? And what's my OpEx, and then you combine those together to get your TOTEX. And I think for any producer, the goal is to be the lowest cost producer. There are some projects that are being developed right now that, to me, the CapEx and OpEx are pretty scary. You know, I think EnergyX is in a great position because we started out as a technology provider, and we've really, honed in on reducing CapEx and OpEx that we can then hopefully pass on some of those savings to our customers. But it's just a function of what the price is compared to what CapEx, OpEx is.
Hi, thank you again for your time today. I could be short-sighted. I'm only starting to learn more about batteries, but we had a few sessions yesterday which spoke about alternate chemistries, so using sulfur or sodium in batteries going forward. So how do you see lithium being a part of the mix? Like, would you see it dominate the industry for the next few years, or would there be a change?
I'll go back to Teague talked about the periodic table and lithium, and it's a chat. When I talk about with my older son who loves all things science and space and others, he's got similar passions. We talk about lithium is element number 3 on the periodic table, and so that makes it incredibly light. and incredibly energy efficient. And the simplistic answer to that, we see all different kinds of battery technology, but certainly in the mobility industry and the portability aspect of energy storage and other areas, it's incredibly hard to compete with just the basics of chemistry. So all kinds of really exciting, I think even earlier, yesterday I was here listening to IBM talking about multiple different battery technologies that they were looking at, but they all had a lithium base to it still in those fundamentals as well. So I think it's got a lot of potential in a lot of different continuous applications, even into solid state and other areas.
Real quick,
Yeah,
sorry.
last question.
Last question. Seth Reed, I'm a PhD student here. Work with lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide practically every day, touch it every day. So we know the price being low, I mean, this is when we buy a ton just to store up. But I guess question about that, and Teague, you bring up price volatility. Is there, and I know Marc, you bring up your technology that can look at low ppm amounts of lithium. Is there a search just for more lithium sources, more lithium brine available, I guess, throughout the world? And I guess counter to that, are there electric vehicle companies that are coming to you with their old, used, end-of-life electric vehicles that are like, hey, can you help us probably take out some of the lithium from there so that we can also have that as a source so that the lithium price can be pretty steady? Thank you.
So the second part of your question, yes. So not necessarily the car companies, but the companies that recycle the batteries. They get the lithium out and they end up with a black mass, a black fluid that comes out of it, and it can be very low ppm. So our technology can be applied to that. And lithium, yeah, I mean, the price is what drives, the market, right? And Teague said if the price goes up, more people are going to want to produce it, more people are going to want to get into the game to a point where it becomes too much, and then it becomes expensive to the end user. But yeah, I mean, we talk to oil companies who have, low concentrations of lithium in their water, who see the opportunity, and again, circles back to the permitting and some of the ownership rights. A lot of this is not settled yet with governments, and it will be soon, very soon, I hope.
I would just add, because I think we've kind of heard it a couple times, back to the low concentration sites and other areas. That, we'll call it the upstream portion of the investment, getting the water out of the ground and having that pre-existing helps in the capital side. But it's still less than the majority of the capital that it actually takes to get through the extraction side, and you're still dealing with hundreds of thousands of barrels a day of water processing as you work through, and even higher if you get into lower concentrations before you can get to some form of commercial scale. And so then the downstream facilities that have to scale still to deal with that is incredible. So it ends up being a really interesting opportunity space and a nut to crack of potential that looks there. But it is kind of that total economics question that we continue to churn on and looking to continued global exploration on resource and qualities to continue to find what are the most commercially and kind of business fundamental developable resources that can contribute in that supply chain, which if anything does help with the volatility side, because you really start to understand how that cost of supply consistently delivers to kind of the demand profiles and what customers are ready and willing to pay for.
We're good? All right, thank you guys, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, panel.